Well, that got everybody in at about the same time. Okay. Well, I'm not doing a whole lot better than I was last week, unfortunately. Spent Friday afternoon in the ER. Got a nice little shot in the hip and some fun meds that lasted until Wednesday. And when they ran out, right back to where I started. So we'll see how this goes. I did just load up on some stuff before we started. So hopefully I can get through this. Weird thing is, it actually feels better when I stand up, which is a problem because I'm not a horse. I can't sleep standing up. That'd be nice if I could, because I haven't had any sleep in a week and a half. Anyway, enough about me and my fun stuff. Let's take a look at your struggles this week. And most of you did struggle mightily with this assignment. I do have some suggestions for you. I think I know what happened with some of you. Anyway, some of you I can't quite figure out exactly what's going on, but you can help me. I think we may have actually gotten, I'm not sure you sent the right files, everybody, but we'll see. We'll take a look here and see what we got. Let's get into Bridge. All right, so Haley, we're going to start with you. So your finished image is very reminiscent of another one that we saw not long ago. I think the biggest problem that we have, these are your original images, and they basically are the same image as far as lighting direction. One is just underexposed and one is not. So and the other problem was that you picked a subject that, even though it has, all these little knurls and things to it, it doesn't take up enough surface area to really be able to highlight it the way you should. And you only have light coming from one direction. If you had
Yeah, and
moved, go ahead.
well, my problem was that I like what am I gonna say? Hold up, my words are going away from here.
Well, that's okay. I'm the one on drugs.
But I took all these pictures with the flash. Like I took that base photo last, and of course, because I did that, I only had the other photo that lined up with it. All the other photos did not line up with it.
Okay, so, and I'm going to show you something because Eva had the same problem as far as her images not lining up properly. I'm going to show you, well, of course, it depends on how you did it, but there are solutions to that as long as certain things stay the same. As long as your, camera to subject distance, your focal length, and all of that stays the same, even if the camera moves a little bit, there are easy ways to line that back up. But yeah, you just didn't have enough source images to work from. You ended up with something, interesting to look at, sort of, but it didn't have the highlighting to it that we wanted to see. And let me see what this one. Oh, that's just the liquid that you used for the background. Got it. The one thing you did change that I wouldn't have is that you straightened the wand up. I liked it better as a diagonal. I think it would have cut through this image a little better. But either way, it's just, it doesn't have. There's just not enough source images with enough lighting. You really only need maybe three, but when you only have one, it's pretty much, there's not much you can do with it. But we'll talk a little bit about lining those things up when we get into Eva's pictures, because like I said, I did notice that there were some alignment issues there as well. All right, so we're going to move through these. Beth, I'm not sure what I'm looking at here. So I
It's
got
like
two images that are the same, and then I've got this.
One's the Photoshop file. There's that.
Yeah, that's this one, but it's visually the same as the other one. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's anything in the layers palette. Let me look. Oh, okay. Now I see. So you just didn't include your source images. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me take
The
a quick
file got
look at
too
this.
big.
All right, now I see what you've done. All right, let me go in. We'll share that screen so everybody can see what's happening there. Yeah, when I just looked at the in Bridge, there were just two images that looked identical, and then there was a third image which was taken from a different angle, which I wasn't sure what was going on. But now I see. So if I strip this down and go back to your background, so that's your base image right there. Then you brought in, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 other images. You know, that one to highlight the bottom, that one to highlight that part, that one to highlight the fan, and then the fans on the right. So, there is a little alignment here as well, I can see with that layer. Let me see if I can adjust this one the way I was going to do the other one. Yeah, so I'll go on that layer, the one that I can see doesn't quite line up, and I'm going to drop the opacity of it back down to about 50% or so. And now I can really see what it's doing. So all I have to do is take the move tool and use my arrow keys and nudge it, and it'll line right up just like that. And then I can go back up to 100%. So now when I turn it on and off, it lines up the way the other one did as well. All right, so that makes a little more sense to me at first, and I didn't open that and look at it, so I apologize for that. So what is this one? Is this just a finished version of a different angle, or because you've got some light streak things going on in here? I'm not sure how you did that.
Where?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still sharing the other file.
Where?
Gets confusing. This one.
Oh yeah, that's just a different angle.
Different, but I see like some light streaking, like with the teal colors, and then the.
Yeah, I downloaded some brushes and I was just playing around with it, and I was like, that looks kind of neat. I'll submit too.
So did you do the same thing with this? Are these different images that you combined, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I couldn't send both Photoshop files because it just got too big.
Yeah. So whenever, what probably would help a little bit, guys, and I think some of you are even sending your raw files. If you just process those out as JPEG versions of your raw files, they're way smaller, like a fraction of the original size. And I can still see, you know, what your source images were and how you did that. It's nice to have the Photoshop document and turn the layers on and off, but it's not absolutely necessary as long as I can see the source images. So this one, I definitely see, now that I know what you did on the first one, now I know what you did on the second one. And yeah, it was a good subject to pick because these are very, it's a very difficult thing to light, obviously, because, hang on one second. Because it's internal, it's in this case, and but you can have a lot of fun with this by, coming in from these different angles, and then the brushes that you added kind of give it this little wispy feel. I like that. I think that was a nice touch. I think actually this is probably, let me look at, just because of the fact that, yeah, this one's still like, I would love to have seen a little more detail on some of those things in the background. I like what you did overall, but I think there's a lot of darkness going on here. So I think I kind of like that a little bit better with the addition of the brushes and a little addition of color and so forth. Still, not exactly maybe what I was looking for, but again, this was a tough subject to light because, what did you use as a light source?
My phone flashlight.
Yeah, see, so it's kind of a broad, it's gonna light up the whole area rather than just little areas. So this week, after we're done with this, we're gonna look at ways to light small areas a lot more effectively, and it's basically the same technique, but just applied a little bit differently. Somebody in the other class, and I should have looked this up, I didn't have a chance to do it yet. Somebody in the other class bought a little ring light for their phone. Does anybody have one of those? They bought it on Amazon, and it slides over your phone and it goes around the lens, and it's actually a battery powered ring light. But you can take it off and use it as a movable light that you can put anywhere. I think she said she paid about $8 for it on Amazon. So you ought to take a look if you want to find something like that. It looked pretty cool. That heck, even a couple of those you could use to light all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be a little more of a broad light source. It's going to light up a big area more so than what we're going to do this week. But hang on, we did not. I need to add something here. All right. Beth, let's move your image in. Yeah, so, and also guys, keep in mind that I know, and I knew going in that this was a very challenging week. This was a tough subject to do. There's a lot of things, especially when you when you're not doing it hands-on and you're not there, actually watching me shoot these things. We just worked from pre-existing images. It makes it a little tough. So I'm really just kind of hoping that you'll come out of it these couple of weeks understanding the concept, if not the execution of it. So don't worry too much about the fact that we didn't quite nail everything. It's just more about the idea and the concept behind it. All right, so Chris, you ended up with a really nice image. I think, and you had a couple of images, your source images were good, like especially this one. Because it's kind of rim lit from the back. It creates these highlights across the top. I think the problem with the other images like this and this, which are they the same? No, they're not the same, but they're lit pretty much the same, and they're overlit. In other words, your subject matter, all three of those source images have a lot of light on them, rather than just like this one, like maybe if one had just lit the heel of the shoe and maybe one had just lit, just different parts of it or whatever. And again, it's tough depending on the light source that you're using. But I give you credit for coming up with this out of what you had for source images, because it is a pretty cool looking finished product. Again, it goes beyond the technique that we were looking for here, and it does sort of overlight. If this were a product shot, I would say no, it's not overlit. But for the fact that we wanted to, just highlight different bits and pieces of an image, it is just a little bit overall overlit. But it's a cool image to end or to end up with. I would just like to have seen a few more like this from different angles that you could have brought together and made it, because shadow is so important. I mean, not that you don't have shadows here, but shadows and darker areas in a subject are also as important as the lit areas, because they give us clue to the form and the dimension of the product. But overall, I mean, pretty nice shot. I'd have been happy with that. So just out of curiosity, I'm just looking at so I can figure out how some things came to be here. What the pattern that's in the background and the base, how did you create that?
Kind of like the same way I did that one picture with the candle. Just oil painted it and then went into liquify, and then once I did that, I kind of liked the way it looked, and then I put it on my phone because I don't know, I like to edit pictures on my phone. I think I can do I don't know, I just like to do it. So I did some phone filters and put it on some 3 or 4 different apps, and we got to what it is now. I don't know. I just kind of crazy with it.
I do like the diagonals that you created, but the opposite diagonals between the background and the base that it's on. And yeah, I assumed that the colorization came from some type of app or filter or whatever.
Yeah,
so
did.
Gotcha. All right, so Eva, so we had the same thing. A couple of things happened to you here. Number one is that, again, your images didn't quite line up, and I did export these out to JPEGs. Let me pull those up. Oops, I still have something else open. Give me a second. All right, so let me get into Photoshop here and take a look at those images. Oh, it just does not want to use keyboard shortcuts when I'm in Zoom. All right, let me try stopping that. Now I should be able to open these. Okay, so these are, so the first thing I think is probably, again, sort of like Chris's images. Most of these, well, especially the upper right one, is just, I know that that could have been a base image, but I think you probably used a little too much influence from that one in the final one. So there's a little bit more light overall on your finished image than there should be. But I just want to open up and this one would actually be a pretty easy one to line up. Let me drag one on top of the other here. So when I look at this and I turn that layer on and off, I can see that, the word Victrola is jumping and things are moving a little bit because of alignment. So same technique, I would just pull the opacity back on that to about 50% or so. Now I can see how it's off and just literally take the arrow keys and nudge it. It's funny when you get it right on, like when you get it pixel for pixel, it. It definitely lines up pretty well. Were you on a tripod when you shot these?
Yep.
Okay, so that's good. That means that, the perspective's not going to change. It means that, focal length and all that's going to stay the same. So it's really just a matter of lining it up with the arrow keys, nudging it around. So let's go back up to 100%. So that one, yeah, I mean, and I did play with this a little bit to see if I could make it a little bit better than the finished one that you ended up with. But again, I think we had images that were just a little bit overlit. Let me get out of this and move that file back. So we just had a lot more light on them than we actually wanted. Let me stop sharing that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this was your final image. And again, you can definitely see the misregistration. It's hard to read some of the words. I think the other thing, I think the record player was probably a good idea. The problem is that shadow box lid that it has. It's so white, it's so bright, and it kind of commands a lot of attention. Plus, it creates some really wonky shadows because of the fact that it's kind of deep. And it creates these deep shadows that go into it. But again, I think I would have looked at, as I look at your source images, so you have one that's an overall base. That's good. You have one that's, I probably would have used this one only for the very front of the case. And then this one probably for the highlight on the record, maybe a little bit on the dials. And then, so that's your final one. That's my final one. I couldn't get it a whole lot better, like I said, because it is just a little bit overlit in general. Typically, when we do these things, we're really trying to pinpoint highlights on, very small items. And it is a tough thing to do, trust me, especially working with light sources that you guys are probably working with. next week, we're going to make that in one way a little easier and in another way a little tougher. But now that you've got this week under your belt, I think it might be a little easier for you next time. All right, let's go into Jaden's. So these were Jaden's raw images. We have a backlit silhouette. We've got one lit from the right, one from the front, one from the left. So pretty much what you needed for source images, without a doubt. And then, so the final version, this one really kind of is kind of starting to look like what I think I would want to see from this technique, where it does look like it's lit with multiple light sources, maybe still just a little bit too much influence from all three together. I'd like to have seen more edge, like maybe use a little more of this and this and less of that. Probably would have helped a little bit to keep some of this skull down a little bit, but overall still pretty good job. And then the additional one, I forget what it said in the text, but it's something like this is a combination, I guess, of the channel blending technique that we did plus this as well. Do you remember how you worded that, Jaden?
I think it was, if this assignment and last assignment had a baby, it would be this.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I do like this. I think both of these images are pretty good. I think this one really falls in line with the assignment, but this one takes it an extra step. Even though we don't really see the effect as much in this one, it does look kind of cool. And we have broken it down into the three primary colors, which is kind of interesting. So, and then of course you can see the skull is the primary colors, but if you look at the shadows down here in the background area, those are the secondary, the cyan, magentas, yellows, and all of that. So that's pretty cool too. So that one was good. Both of them, I think you did well with. I think you really got the concept. But I think that one's just a little bit more interesting. So Alana, you did really well too. So let me go through your source images for everybody. So again, lit very obliquely from the side. I like that. Lit from overhead. I like that. Lit from the other side. And then, just a couple of additional ones. I don't know how many of these you played with. And your final image, even though, again, I might say, well, it's a little overlit. I think this kind of needed to be. I think this subject kind of needed to be in order for us to see the detail that we do in it. And I really like the way it came out. Like I love like if I were going to light a hockey player on the ice, this is how I would light them. I would have, these kicker lights coming from the back corners to highlight the edges. I'd have a lot of little things coming in to make sure I saw detail in all the dark areas. And then I like the little addition that you added on at the very end, which was the spray of snow out. Is this a brush, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I use different brushes for the snow.
Yeah, that I think overall it was a really good choice of subject. That does not, however, look like Evgeny Malkin. Just
I know.
like not even a little bit. Yeah, I guess they didn't even try. I guess they just picked a generic head. All right, so let's throw that in. So yeah, I like that a lot. As we look back at these, there are most of these are good final images, even though they may not have been exactly the skull and the tennis shoes probably aren't exactly what I wanted to see for the assignment. They're really good finished images, and I really like the hockey player too. So you some of you came up with some really nice final images, which I'm not going to knock. Like I said, I'm never going to knock anybody for going beyond what the assignment calls for, especially if you can create something that is a little different, a little bit unexpected. So good job. We are going to, like I said, we are going to play with this technique more, just in a little bit of a different way. I did send out an announcement. I hope everybody got that about downloading the files that you were going to need. Did anybody not get that or not get the files? All right, so it looks like everybody's got them. All right, so we kind of went through that pretty quick, but let's kind of take a vote and see who likes what here. Let me get this up where I can see all of you. So who likes the slap shots? 2, okay. Who likes the skull? Who likes the Victrola? The Harry Potter wand? The tennis shoes? And the computer. We have a 3-way tie. And to be honest with you, I would have given all 3 of them a point anyway. So let's just do that, because those 3 are probably, meaning these 3, probably the best of the week here. So nice images, guys. Like I said, we are going to play a little bit more with the actual technique. Let me get out of this, but in a different way. So one of the problems that you all, most of you experienced, like I said, was overlighting your product. And that is a function of having a light source that is just a little too broad for what you're trying to do. So what we're going to do, and actually, before I forget to do this, let me get those points in there. Okay. So one way to combat that is to use a light source that that does create smaller specular highlights on things. So, and I thought I had them here. I was going to show you some of them. I have a whole sort of an arsenal of little lights, little pen lights, little flashlights, not a full-size flashlight, but small ones, you know, that have, you know, a tip that's about maybe that big. Some of them actually have little colored caps that I can put on them to colorize the light. And also glow sticks, which are really cool. You can buy those glow sticks like at Walmart, or I've seen them at Lowe's in the checkout, and you know, they're just about this long, and you can turn them on and off, and they'll either pulsate or they will, you know, the shaft of it will turn whatever color it is, red, green, blue, whatever. And those are really cool for creating an overall light. But it's the pen lights and the flashlights that are probably the best case scenario. So in the images that that I sent out, let me pull those up. Hang on a second. Got to figure out where I put them. Yeah, there we go. And we'll share those so you guys can take a look at them here. So these are a bunch of source images. I'll go through them. So there's just one, which is an overall illumination. Again, this one is only there in case I find, when I'm done, if I find that there's an area that's just so dark without any detail that I want some detail in, I can use this to bring it in. Then one is lit just simply from overhead. I'm trying to remember what I used as a light source. I think it was an LED, an LED wand, like it's actually a garage light, battery powered, but it's about this long, and it's just an LED tube. And it's nice and easy to, you know, you can create an overall illumination with it, or you can kind of pull it back and just highlight something. This was done with one of those little pen lights that has a red cap on it. So lit from the camera right, then the same thing lit from camera left. Then just a small pen light that lit up only the faces of the little blocks. And then this was a light from overhead, another pen light. Even though you see the light source in the frame, you don't have to worry about that because you're not going to use that. You're only going to use, if anything, the highlights on the tops of the blocks. So that'll just, be cut out. And then same thing here. This is one of my glow sticks from overhead, just to give a little bit of top side illumination. Glow stick from the front. And then the final version is just a combination of all of those. So you've got the reds and the blues coming in. You've got, a lot of shadow, but still you can see everything that's in here. Now, here's what's different about this technique as opposed to what we did last week. These images are shot in near total darkness, and they're very long shutter speeds. So for example, if you're using a pen light or something like that, it's a very low intensity light. You need to have the shutter open long enough for that to record. So the way this is done is the camera shutter is tripped. If you have a bulb setting on your camera, it'll just say B on the dial somewhere. That means that when you push the shutter button once, the shutter opens up and it stays open until you push it again. Now, the problem with that is that if you're touching the camera all the time, you have the possibility of moving it and having misaligned images. The good news is that almost all cameras anymore, almost all DSLRs, digital cameras, can be controlled by an app. If you haven't tried it, you more than likely, your camera either came with software that you can download onto your phone, or you can just go to the manufacturer's website and download the software for your phone. And it allows you to fire the camera from your phone. That way you don't actually have to touch it. So let's just take a look at the metadata here, and I can tell you. So this was a 4.4 second exposure. It was shot at f8 at ISO 200. This is same settings except 4.5 seconds. This is 5.7 seconds. 3.3, it just depends on how long it takes to light it up. 1.2 and 1.2 and then 3.7. So, this is trial and error. You trip the shutter. Again, I kept all of my f-stop and my ISO the same throughout all of these. It was f8 at ISO 200. And then it was just trial and error. You trip the shutter, you paint. Basically what you're doing is painting the object with light. And then when you trip the shutter off, your image comes up and you can determine whether or not it's underexposed or overexposed. If it's underexposed, you just do it a little bit longer. If it's overexposed, you do it a little bit less. And then you have the ability, like I said, when you go in, because of the fact that you're lighting much smaller areas, especially something like this, you have the ability to really pull these images together without overlighting the subject in the first place. All right, so let me get back to where my final is. Trying to think of what else you need to know about that. So obviously the camera needs to be locked down again. It has to be on a tripod or something that's not going to move. If at all possible, you don't want to touch the camera. If you have to, if that's the only way you can fire the camera is by pushing the shutter button, and you find that it moves, as long as your zoom doesn't change or, anything like that, it is going to be a simple matter, like we just did with the other images, of going in, taking the move tool and nudging them a little bit to line them back up once you bring them in. So we're going to run this technique, but I want to show you, before we do, I want to show you some of the uses for this. Just have to figure out where I put them. Light painting. I have a folder that I brought in. Oh, wait, here we go. Yeah. So there's a friend of mine who lives in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, who kind of pioneered this technique and has done it in a big, big way. So these are, we're going to run through some of these. These are his before and after images. So this is the image as he shows up, sets up the subject late in the day, but before it gets dark, and takes this base exposure. And then after it gets dark, he takes all sorts of little light tools, and some of these are pretty big. Some of them are on boom arms because he's lighting automobiles, houses, aircraft, all sorts of things. So he's got, a lot bigger light sources than we're using, but he also has the very small ones as well. And this is what he'll end up with. So an image like this can have anywhere from 50 to 200 layers in it. I worked with him on an image that we did of a guy with his Harley in an old grungy garage that was pretty cool. And I think we ended up with 125 layers on that image, but it was really fast as far as how it was put together because of the automation. And we started on that a little bit last week. So let's look at a couple other ones. So this is base image showing up. That is the finished image after it's, and again, notice that he's not shooting these. I mean, he can shoot the car itself. He can do these exposures in total darkness. It can be, dead of night, but he does have to get one exposure at least of that sky at dusk so that he can bring that in. So this is just all layered together. So a lot of these are cars. This is just shot in a guy's garage, and then that's what it was done. Notice the lighting inside the car on the seats, how cool that is. The lighting, like on that front wheel, is probably done from 3, 4, or 5 different directions just to give all of those highlights. There is no way you can light a car or anything like this any other way than this. This one's a really impressive one because, again, it's just kind of a crappy shot, to start with. And then by the time it's all light painted, this is what you end up with. Makes it look a lot more inviting. So the exteriors, again, are kind of big. These can take hours and hours to shoot because of how many different exposures you need to take. But that's a pretty cool, so he went back and lit that house, and even up on the top of the house, he lights things like that with drones. He has a drone that has what's called a light cube, or a series of light cubes on them. So the drone can go up and he can maneuver it around and light those different areas with his drone. So into the aircraft areas, again, base exposure for the sky, and then for the stuff in the background in the distance there, and then light painted it. So these are hard, especially like if you're shooting the cockpit, like he's lighting inside the cockpit. Think about that. Getting in that plane to light the cockpit is going to move the plane. So you're going to have some issues with misregistration if you're not really, really careful. So that would be the last image that he would shoot. So again, pretty cool. And just to let you know how lucrative this is, this guy is he does all types of photography, but this is sort of a specialty of his. And when I worked with him a couple of years ago in Canonsburg on a job, he told me that in the month of July, just 1 month, he billed $76,000 worth of light painting jobs. So that's just 1 month just for one technique. So these people will pay big, big bucks for this kind of stuff. People that own classic cars, people that own aircraft, they will really throw out the money for stuff like this, especially if it's done this well. Notice the, look at the light sources. Obviously, we're dealing with a very, very small aperture here, which is what causes that starburst to come off of these light sources. Everything's got to be in focus front to back. Whoops, I somehow did not get the after version of these. Well, that's the before and that's the after of that. I don't know if the other ones are in here. Oh, there it is. So that one is the after of that. Just really cool stuff, the way it's done. That one is the after version of that. I mean, if somebody's looking to sell this property and they have an image like that, I think it's going to be a lot easier to sell. So before and after, oops, there we go, after. And then on the small scale, which is what we're going to be working with mostly, are smaller images. You can use smaller light sources, pen lights, small wands and things like that. And really, really, now notice what's happening here. So we've got the front of this bottle, this glass and everything are really fully lit up in that one, but look at it in the finished one. We just have this kind of swath of light coming across part of that label, letting part of it stay in shadow. The liquids are lit also from behind to give them a little bit of luminescence. Look at the highlights and the patterns on the table underneath both of them. It's not all lit up. Okay. We just have a little, it's almost like there's a spotlight over top of the bottle and over top of the glass coming down on top of that. Let's look at a couple other ones. Not very inviting the way it sits there, but I would eat that. That looks pretty good to me, except for the asparagus. I hate asparagus. Small items like this, which are kind of fun to play with. And again, just really take note of the shadowing on these things and how like those pieces that are in the background have shadows cutting across them, because it's just, just taking a light wand or something and creating a streak and letting the rest of it stay in shadow. Everything you see here, the can with the pencil in it in the back, that's one exposure. The yellow can to the left of that, that's another exposure. The little drawers in the back right-hand corner, that's another exposure. All of these are separate exposures that are brought together as layers. This one is a really interesting, I actually have a phone that looks just like that, except it's a little cleaner. But the finished image on this one looks pretty cool. Very, I don't know, almost like something you'd see in a video game, right? Like a little clue thing or something. And then outside again, lighting up with drones. Pretty big difference from that to that, but that's all lit with a drone. So I just wanted to give you an idea for, the types of things that you can do with this. We're going to play with these images, and we're going to really, it's the same technique that we did last week. We may expand on it a little bit because I think some of you, we wrote an action to kind of help this, but it didn't quite work for everybody. So we're going to do that again. Let me get my tablet ready here. By the way, is anybody work with a Wacom tablet or any kind of graphics tablet? No? So if you don't have something like this, it's sort of like anything that you do with a paintbrush, it's like trying to paint with a bar of soap. Like it just, the mouse is not really intuitive for that, but the brush is. A couple of the other things, I mean, the customization on this thing is amazing. I can, all these dials and buttons and wheels that can be customized to do all sorts of things that I don't have to go to the computer and dig in menus to do, little shortcuts. The other thing is that it's pressure sensitive. So you can set this pen up so that the harder you push, the more paint comes out, or, the more color, or if you turn it over, it becomes an eraser. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do to customize this that just makes it a lot faster. But the main thing is that it just feels more intuitive to be using something like that as opposed to a mouse. All right, so let's see where we're going to start here. I think we are going to rewrite. Did anybody who wrote the action last week that we did, let me see everybody here. Did anybody's action actually work? It did? Okay, cool. So if your action worked, great. Couple of you did. If your action worked, you don't have to change it or you don't have to rewrite it. We are going to add a step to the end of it, but keep the one you've got. And those of you that it didn't work for, we're going to rewrite that again. So I would say for starters, let's open these two images, which are 8204 and 8205. And I have to stop sharing that and share them in Photoshop. Give me a second. See if I can zoom this down without losing it. Zoom out. There we go. I hate using the menus to do this, but the keyboard shortcuts are not working in Zoom. Okay, so let's see where our first step is going to be. So our first step, we are going to rewrite the actions. So let me get into my actions palette. If your actions palette is not showing, just go under the window menu, select actions, and it should show up. And remember, we created a folder, an action set last week called Art 385. If the action that you wrote in that set didn't work, just toss it away. Just grab it, literally drag it to the trash can, and we'll start over. If your action did work, hang on to it, and we'll add a step at the end. Trying to get your, hang on one second. I got an extra image open here. Here we go. All right, so 8204, we're going to say that that is going to be our base image. And I do think that we are going to do this with lassoing and making a selection as well, just like we did last time, rather than bringing in the whole layer, because I don't want to increase. These files are already 57 megabytes. If we just drag in, you know, a full layer, we're going to add 57 megabytes every time we do that, and it's eventually going to slow your computers down. So before we do anything, we do need to make a selection. Just take the lasso tool and drag a very loose selection around the two cameras. You can get a little bit of the blocks if you want, but the cameras are really the main thing. That's really about all we're probably going to work with here. Also, look in your options bar. When you have the lasso tool selected, make sure that your feather is set to 0 pixels. If it's not, just put your cursor over the word feather and drag it to the left down to 0. Because we don't want this to fade out. We want it to be a very hard-edged selection at this point. Okay, so now let's start with the action again. And this is tricky. So for this to work, you have to do everything exactly as I do it and exactly when I do it. I mean, not at the same time, obviously, but each step has to be perfect in order for this to work. Otherwise, you're going to get an error when you run it back. So once your selection is made in your actions palette, just click on the folder Art 385 so that's highlighted. Again, if you have a working action, just hang tight at this point. If you don't, once that's highlighted, we're going to click the new action button, which is the little plus sign next to the trash can. And we'll call this, what do we call it? Paste in place. Is that what we called it? Paste in place. And if you have an available keyboard shortcut, go ahead and give it that. Although I think when we run this back, initially we won't use the keyboard shortcut. We're just going to play it because sometimes you'll get an error, even if those keyboard shortcuts are available, if your system software is using them for anything. All right, so the name of the action is paste in place. The set is Art 385 and function key if you want, and then hit record. If it tells you that it's going to hide the shortcut for something else, just hit OK. Now, before we do anything, you should look in your actions palette. You should see the little red record light should be on. And that is the second icon from the left in the bottom of the actions palette. Everybody see that? All right, cool. Okay, so these steps, very critical. So if you're on a Mac, the first thing is Command A. I'll do Windows. I'm sorry. No, that's not right. I just messed up. Okay, so this is good. You get to see what happens when you mess up. So you see in my action over here, it says set selection. And it actually, if you probably can't read it, but it says set selection to all, meaning that I just did a select all, and that's not what I wanted to do. So no problem. I can stop recording. That's the first button. And I can just take that step and throw it to the trash and get rid of it. I can start all over again. So I will drag my selection around my cameras. I will start recording. I've already got the action there. I just don't have any steps in it. I'll start recording. Where did my selection go? Okay, now I'm recording. I have my selection. So it's not Command A, I apologize. It's Command C for copy. And if you're on Windows, it's Control C for copy. And as you do this, you should see these steps showing up in your actions palette. So the Art 385 folder, underneath that, it should say paste in place. Underneath that, it should say copy. And the record light should still be on. Now, if you're on a Mac, you can hit Command W for close window, or Windows, it's Control W. And you should see the close step in your action as well. Now, the key is to not paste, because if it pastes, it's not going to paste it in the right place. It's paste in place, which is under paste special. The keyboard shortcut is Shift Command V on a Mac. I believe if you're on Windows, check it and make sure, because they do change these keyboard shortcuts from time to time. So actually go to the edit menu and come down and see what your keyboard shortcut is there. You can actually just select that as well. You could just, go edit, paste special, and select paste in place, and it will write that into the action, which is what it just did for me. So now we've got 3 steps in our action: copy, close, paste, and paste. And if I look at my layers palette, I've got 2 layers. I've got this top layer, and I've got my background that I started with. All right, now I'm going to stop recording, because that was the basic action that we did last week. Oh no, I'm sorry. There was one more step, wasn't there? If you stopped recording, you can start recording again. Just click the record button. And in the layers palette, the bottom of the layers palette, we're going to create a layer mask, but we're going to create a black layer mask rather than a white one. If you just click the layer mask icon, the third one from the left, it's going to create a regular layer mask. If you hold down the Option or the Alt key when you click it, it's going to create a layer mask that's black, and it hides that layer that we just brought in. So you should see a black layer mask in your palette. And then you have a 4th step in your action: copy, close, paste, and make. Now you can stop recording. So that's the basic action that we did last week. We're going to add a step to it, because anything that I have to do, let me get this image closed. Anything that I have to do more than once, I don't want to do, over and over again. I want to automate this process. So because of the fact that I have to take the lasso tool and make a selection around every layer that I want to bring in, once I run this action, I want to just start painting. I don't want to have to go to my toolbox and select the correct brush tool. So what we're going to do, and we talked about this last week, but we didn't do it. We're going to create a brush preset that allows us to write into the action, so that at the end of this, once it pastes this in, it actually selects that tool for us, and we're already ready to start painting. So to create a preset, we are going to take the paintbrush. You'll select the paintbrush. Again, you should not be recording at this point. Your action should be stopped. I've seen a lot of people that forget to stop recording, and we start doing all these other things, and it records like 1,000 steps after the action. So you don't want to do that. Just make sure you're not recording at this point. So we're going to take the paintbrush. We're going to make sure our foreground color is white. If it's not, just hit D on the keyboard for the default colors. If that makes your foreground color black instead of white, hit X, and that'll reverse them. So D is for default, and X is to switch the colors back and forth. So you want a white paintbrush, and we're going to set the size of that paintbrush to about, in this case, let's do 300 pixels. And I just did that by using the bracket keys, just to the right of the P key on the keyboard. Just increase or decrease that brush size. I went to 300 pixels, and it's a very soft edge brush. there's two ways to change the hardness of the brush. One is to use the bracket keys in conjunction with the shift key. There are 4 steps if you do that. The other one is to click the actual brush icon in the options bar and change the hardness. And you have the full range of 0 to 100% on that. We just want to set it to 0. And as far as opacity, I'd say let's do that at 50%. So in the options bar, you'll see your brush icon. You should see 300, a soft edge 300 pixel brush. Mode is normal, and then the opacity is 50%. The rest of the things we're not going to change at this point. Now, they've changed a couple of things, and I need to look and see what our best method for doing this is. Okay. So in your options bar, you should see this little home icon in the upper left-hand corner. Just to the right of that is a brush with a little down-facing triangle. I'm going to have you click the down-facing triangle, and this is where the tool presets live. This is where all of your saved tool presets live. If this little box at the bottom that says current tool only is checked, uncheck that. You want to see all of your tool presets. And the reason is that if this is checked and I run an action that is trying to select a tool preset that is hidden, it won't work. It has to be visible. So I always leave my tool presets, all of them showing all the time. All right, so again, if your options are set 300 pixel soft edge brush, normal mode, 50% opacity, white as your foreground color. If you click the little gear in the upper right-hand corner, you can select new tool preset. It's going to ask you if you would rather create a brush preset. At this point, I'm going to say no. And the reason is because I'm not sure a brush preset can be written into an action, but a tool preset can. So when the new tool preset dialog comes up, I'm going to call it light painting brush. Make sure the include color checkbox is turned on because we want it to set it to white. If your foreground color is red and this isn't checked, it'll keep it at red and you don't want to do that. So light painting brush with include color and hit OK. So it should show up in your list that once you hit OK, you should see that light painting brush in your tool preset list. Does anybody not see that? All right, everybody's got it? Cool. So now for this to work, for us to build this part into the action, we can't be on that light painting brush in the tool preset. You have to select a different tool preset just to get off of that because we want it to select it in the action and it's already selected. So just click on anything else that's in there to highlight it. Then we can add to the existing action that we have just by going to the actions palette, click the last step of the action, which is make, start recording, click the record button, and then go to your tool preset drop down and select the light painting brush preset that you just selected and then stop recording. So now your action should have 5 steps. Copy, close, paste, make, and select tool preset. Now, let me give you a couple of words of warning for things that can happen to you. Again, if your tool preset drop down gets changed so that this current tool only is on and you are, let's say I've got the rubber stamp tool selected. Well, I only have one tool preset that uses that. So this action would come back with an error message because that tool preset is not there. So current tool only needs to be deselected for this to work. And I just simply leave that off all the time. And I think what we want to do to test this, to see if it works, we're going to test it and then we'll take a break here. In your layers palette, if you brought this layer in, the second layer, let's throw it away. Let's drag it to the trash so that we only have our background layer to start with for image 8204. Because we want to see if this works. So I'm going to go back and share those two images again. So let me run mine and I'll show you how I'm going to do this, and then you can try yours as well. So I'm just going to take the lasso tool. I'm going to drag a selection around my cameras. I'm going to go to the actions palette. Now right now I'm on the last step of my action, so that's not going to work. I actually have to select the action itself. I have to click on the action that says paste in place. And I could run the keyboard shortcut, but I think just to be safe, to make sure that this works, I'm going to click the play button instead. And what it should do is copy this selection, close the window, paste it in place on the other document, and then select the tool preset that I created. Let's see what happens. All right, in my layers palette, it is there with a black layer mask and my tool preset is selected, so it worked. So now let's see if yours works. If you have those two images open, 8204, 8205, drag a selection around your what you want in 8205, and then in the actions palette, highlight your paste in place action and hit the play button and see what happens. If you have success, I want to see you jump up and down and do a cartwheel, or just raise your hand, either one. Jaden's worked. Oh, come on, Beth, yours worked last week. How come it didn't work this week? Did the first part of it work and just not the last part? Like, do you have a second layer in there?
I think I'm doing something wrong and I don't know what.
Okay, do you want to, let me stop sharing and you can share your screen. We'll take a look.
Okay.
Okay, well, you've got it. You've got your second layer with the black layer mask. So that part worked.
Yeah.
And your tool preset is selected. So your action worked.
No, but like it's not like in my actions. Like
Oh, the tool preset thing is not set there?
no, I try to make it and I don't see it in like my list.
Okay. Well, let's just create it's not in your list. Pull your list down, like pull the bottom of that window down, the bottom right corner. So let's see all of the things that you've got there. Okay. Current tool only is off. So yeah, it just did not record. So let's just try it again. Click because your parameters are all set. 50% opacity, white, 300 pixel, all looks good there. So click the little gear icon, select new tool preset, click no, and then just name it whatever. What did we call ours? Brush, whatever. Okay, that works. Now remember, if you ever rename this tool preset, your action won't work. So just be aware of that. Okay, so now you got the tool preset. Select a different tool preset because you have to be on a different one in order to write this into your action. There you go. Now go to the bottom of your actions palette, click record, and then pull your brush presets down again, your tool presets, select whatever, and stop recording. You got it. Now it worked.
Okay, cool.
Now, one more thing before we take a look. Let's go ahead and stop sharing that, Beth. I want to show one more thing here. Okay. Okay, so you've successfully written an action. The problem is it's not saved. Okay. If Photoshop crashes on you right now, you're likely to lose that action forever. In fact, if you don't save it and it doesn't crash for 6 months, when it does crash and you've written all these wonderful automated actions, you're going to lose them all. You actually physically have to save these sets as a file on your computer. And I'll show you how to do that. So you can't save a single action. You can only save an action set. So what I will have you do is click on the Art 385 folder. And then in the very top right corner of the actions palette, there's that little set of lines. If you click that, you get this very long drop-down menu. Mine will be longer than yours. And you click on Save Actions. Now, by default, it should come up with a dialog box that's already taken you to where your actions are. If it's not, if it doesn't take you there, you can save these anywhere. The only problem is if it doesn't put them in the proper folder, you just have to manually update them when you update Photoshop. Like you have to move them from an older version of Photoshop into a newer version. If they go into the proper folder, then it does it for you automatically, but it's a buried folder. Like if you look, I don't know if you can see, can you see my dialogue, the save dialogue? Yes or no? No, no. Yeah, I don't know if I can share that. But when I click on the save dialog or the path for my save, it's like buried down 8 levels of folders. It's inside my library folder, my application support, Adobe, Photoshop, presets, and actions. It's way down there. And the biggest problem is that it is a hidden folder. Like you can't even really just go in and find that without making it visible with some kind of third-party software. I think it's even worse in Windows. So if when you clicked save and your save dialog came up, if it did not take you to where you're seeing your actions, then just put them out on your desktop or something so that you get it saved and you won't ever lose it. And then just whenever you decide where to put it, just click the save button, and I'm going to put mine where they belong. And now they're always going to be there. If I show you my my drop down for my actions palette, you can see all of these on the right hand side are my saved action sets. So right underneath the word save actions, there's a small group that you should have 6 or 8 of these in here. These are the ones that ship with Photoshop. The ones below that line are mine. These are either ones that I have written myself or bought from somebody or gotten as part of a package or something like that. And as long as they're in the folder that they're supposed to be in, buried down in that library folder, they will always show up here. So let me just make sure that one was in there, Art 385. It is not there. Let me figure out why it's not there. Save actions. Well, it's showing up there. I'm wondering if I need to, I may need to restart Photoshop to see that. Let me try that. Photoshop is very weird about saving actions. But if you don't do that, you really can mess things up. And I've seen people lose literally dozens and dozens of really cool actions because they didn't save them. All right, let me reopen Photoshop. See if it shows up in the list now. If you've bought them or downloaded actions, no problem. You can, they're going to be a file somewhere. It's got an ATN extension. That's an action extension file. They'll be somewhere on your computer. You just have to find them and reload them in. And actually, to load them in is really easy. You just double click that ATN file wherever you find it. If it doesn't show up in the drop-down list, you just find it, double click it, and it'll load it into your actions palette. All right, still loading here. Here we go. Yep, it's there now. So I had to restart. Okay, so let me share that. I'll show you what I mean. Oh, I guess I need a file open. I'll just open any file here. Okay, so now in my actions palette, I'm going to close up all of these long ones. This Art 385, it is in my list. It's the very top one on my list. If I lose that for some reason, if I drag it down here to the trash can, I haven't lost it. All I've done is remove it from the actions palette. It's still there. And I can just click that drop down, select Art 385, and it will load it back in. So it's really easy. And like I said, I could also find that file physically on my hard drive and double click it, and it would load it into the actions palette as well. All right. So we're going to take a little, let's see, let's do, let's come back at 5:25. That's 15 minutes. And we're going to take these files, use the action that we wrote to composite these files together. And that'll be our next step. So let me stop sharing this, and we'll see you guys in about 15 minutes. Welcome back. Okay, so we are going to try to walk through putting this image together, and we'll do it together. Hopefully we'll get it to work. If your action did not work properly, that's okay. You can still do this manually. It just goes way, way faster if you have the action. So let me get my Windows. I'm going to start mine from scratch here. So let me get my Windows open. So we'll start with the same two, the 8204, 8205. I think this is going to work best with only 2 images open at a time. Because again, we could have some issues with our action running that if you have more than 2 files open. Photoshop can get confused about which image or which window it's pasting something into. So it's always better to make sure that the parameters are the same on what you're working on as they were when you actually wrote the file. So let me get those 2 images open. So again, I'm going to start off by making a selection around my camera. If you already have your first layer in, it's fine. You don't have to do this again. But then I'm just going to hit F6, and yeah, it doesn't want to work. Oh, because I took the keyboard shortcut off. All right, so let me just try that again. All right. Wow, what happened there? It just stopped sharing that entirely. Well, it worked. It just stopped sharing. So let me go back in. So this is my my first 2 layers. My background image, which is the 8204. You can see in my layers palette, I've got this other layer, which I can, if I disable the layer mask, you can see what's on it. They should line up pretty much perfectly. And then all I'm going to do, I've already got my tool preset. So I'm just going to take that paintbrush and I'm going to paint some highlights in on the sides of these cameras. And, you know, how much I build in is up to me, or where I paint is up to me. I'm just going to probably go pretty much along the left edge of both of these cameras. And I am, even though I'm at 50%, I'm painting a number of brush strokes to build that up. I prefer building it up than just painting it all at once. You can see this is what I did. This is what I painted. Okay, that's my white paintbrush. And so those are the only areas that are, the white areas are the only areas of that layer that I'm letting show through. If I turn it off, you can see what I've got. And it's always a good idea as you're working through this to turn these layers on and off so you can decide if there's something I want to change, which I think I am. I can just change my colors back. I like that highlight on the top of this camera. So I'm going to put that back in. So I just changed my foreground color to black instead of white and painted that back in. And I think I'm probably going to leave the red off of these blocks in the front as well. So once you've got that, then it's really just a simple matter of following suit. I'm going to go back to my, back into Bridge. I'm going to open the next image, which is 8206. And it's probably, you're probably not going to see that unless I share that. Yeah, so this is the new image that I brought in. So I'll take my lasso tool and make a selection again around the camera, taking whatever I want. I'm going to hit my keyboard shortcut and paste it into the new document. And then I'll just paint in that side as much as I want. And so the nice thing is that you can always go back and change this. You can just change your foreground and your background colors real easily. Maybe this time I'll leave a little bit of the red on those blocks. We'll just see. Maybe a little bit will help. And then I'm just gonna, again, I've got 1, 2, 3, probably have 3 more images that I'm gonna bring in here. So if you're working along with me, great. If you're not, just kind of watch what's happening here. So that's my next one. I'm going to select the blocks. Actually, I'm going to select the blocks and the reflection of the blocks for the most part. And I also might like this little EOS 6D part. I don't know. Maybe I'll like that. Maybe I won't. So I'll make that selection, run my action. And then, and I can change the size of my brush, you know, just on my tablet, all I have to do is rotate a little wheel. You can also use the bracket keys to do that. Yeah, I don't like that. I think I liked it better red, so we're just gonna leave that red. However, with the blocks, I do want to bring that in. I'll leave a little bit of the red light on top of the blocks. But I want to see that reflection. There. It does get confusing when you're at the end and you have all of these layers and you're trying to figure out something you want to add or remove, what layer it's actually on. So one way to find that out, just so you know, in the layers palette, you have this little eyeball icon next to each layer. And, you know, you turn that eyeball on and off, it actually deactivates the layer. But if you want to see only that layer and you just want to see what's on that layer and nothing else, if you hold down the Alt key or the Option key and click the eyeball, it turns every layer off except that one. So now you can see at a glance what's on any particular layer. All right, let me go back to Bridge and open the next image. And this one, I kind of like not only the highlight on top of the blocks, but I like the little lighting and the shadow in between the blocks. Let me share that image. Yeah, there. So I'm going to select all of that. And you notice when I make a selection, if I didn't get it all, like I want this little piece out here as well, that I'm just adding to my selection. It's because in the options bar for the lasso tool, you have 4 options. One is for a normal selection. One is for add to the selection. One is subtract from the selection. And then the next one is intersect. And you can tell which one you have by the little icon. You see my lasso tool has a little plus sign by it. If I hold down the Alt or the Option key, it changes to a minus sign and I would be removing from that selection. But because I have this second icon selected, anytime I just drag around a new area, it's going to add that to my selection. All right, hit F6 or hit my keyboard shortcut, bring that in. And then let's bring these highlights in on tops of these blocks. And also the shadows in between the blocks. Being careful not to get rid of my reflections because I like those. And while I'm on this layer, one of my buttons on my tablet is for toggling my foreground and background colors. So literally as I'm painting, if I paint something the wrong way, I just hit that button and change my background colors and paint it out again. So it's starting to take shape. Need a little more detail in my cameras here. So we're going to take the next one, 8209. And I think I'll use the blue highlight that's in on the tops of these cameras. I think that's probably all I'll use from this layer. Again, if I start to lose my Canon, I can just change my foreground and background colors and paint that back in. And I think there's only one more image. It's this blue, which I'll use to bring a little bit of blue. I don't know, we'll select all of this. I don't know how much of it I'll use, but I'll put it all in there and we'll take a look. Yeah, not sure I'm digging that. Let me change that and take some of that back out. I do like the base of the camera being, that's about the only place that I've lit the base of the camera. Maybe bring a little bit of that blue reflection into the blocks reflection. So you can just keep playing with it. I mean, there's no right or wrong to it as far as how you want it to look. This is, you know, it's lit from a number of different angles. So you can create whatever it is that you want to create with this. This was done during a class, so it's not, you know, it's not probably the best images for this. But they definitely, you know, should give you the idea of what's happening here. So here's my layers. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. Show you what's on each one. That's just the last one we put in. Highlights of the cameras, a little bit of the blocks. And then finally my base image. So the hardest part, like I said, is trying to figure out what's on what layer. You just have to go onto the mask and paint a little bit and understand that this layer stack, it works like a stack. In other words, if you have something opaque at the top of, in the layer at the top, it's going to hide the things that are underneath that. So even though I might have something on this layer, and if I can't see it, it's probably because a layer above it is hiding it in some way. It acts just like a, you know, a layer of acetate, you know, or all these layers coming down. So you have to be aware that your layers can actually be hiding something. So you might want to start from the top and turn your layers off until you find what you're looking for. But this is pretty simple image, 7, 8 layers, nothing, you know, too overly dramatic. Pretty simple image to work on. Let me stop that. Give me a second to go back in and look for something. So here's some images. These are the raw files of what we just worked on, but here are some other images as well that we could have worked on. I shot these for another class. So an overall exposure of that. And then as you look, using these little pinpoint flashlights to light certain areas inside the car, just maybe the front edge of the knife. And just what I want you to take notice of is how each one of these is lit, that the angle of the light changes dramatically. It's very seldom coming from the camera other than like this base exposure. All of these are coming from a very oblique angle just to light up different things that I may only use a little highlight on the fender of this car from that one. I may only use the light coming underneath the car in this one. It's always best to have more images than fewer because you can always go back. If you don't have something, you might have an issue, but you don't have to use all of your images. Here you can see the light source is actually in there and it's just shining underneath the car to light like the inside rim of that wheel. Oops, that's something else. Okay. So what you're going to do, hopefully, next week, or for next week rather, is create an image like this, but using a much more pinpoint source of light than what you did last time. Now here's an easy way to do it. You really only need to use one light. I would think for the most, but you can modify it in a couple of different ways. But if, let's say all you have is a standard flashlight, just cut a piece of construction paper, heavy construction paper or cardboard or something like that, and cut a smaller hole in it and tape it onto the front of the flashlight. So it effectively makes it a smaller pen light. If you actually have a pen light, something that focuses the beam a little bit more, great, that'll work really well for you. But if not, a regular old flashlight just with a smaller aperture in front of it will let you restrict that light a lot more to where it is that you want it to be. You can experiment with putting colors in front of it, but you don't have to because you can always colorize your layer. Let me show you what I mean here. Let me get that window open. Oops, I need a different window, sorry. Okay. So let's say, I'm only working with a white flashlight and I decide, wow, I'd really like to have a little bit of color on this. All you need to do is put a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Let me do that again real quickly, or not as quickly rather. You can find it a couple of different places. You can find it under the layer menu. It's layer, new adjustment layer, hue and saturation. That's way too much work for me. In the bottom of the layers palette, fourth icon from the left, there's this little pop-up of all your adjustment layers. And you can just select hue and saturation and then click the colorize button. It'll kind of give you a preset. You can increase the saturation and change the color to anything you want. So even if you've shot these with white light, you can make any layer any color you want it to be. And just by changing your lightness and the saturation, you're going to get a completely different look. All right. Almost there, guys. Looking for one more thing. All right, not seeing what I'm looking for, so we'll pass on that. So again, the technique is pretty much the same thing. If your action didn't work, don't worry about it. I just wanted to expose you to writing actions. If you can go back and play with it and get it to work, that'd be great. It'll save you some time without a doubt, but you can still do this without it. You just have to do each step a little manually. Select, copy, close, paste in place, take your tool preset, or select your tool or whatever. So it's a little bit, but the fact you're only working with 5, 6 layers, something like that, it shouldn't take that long to do. The action does just speed it up a little bit. But same technique as last time. The only difference is, again, shooting this in darkness or very near darkness, using a very small pinpoint light source and keeping the shutter open long enough. And I forgot to mention, so if your camera does not have a bulb setting on it, if you don't see a B on your dial for the mode, you can probably just set it to manual and do like a 4 or 5 seconds. Set it, set your shutter speed to like 4 seconds or 6 seconds or whatever. And if you don't have to paint with your light the whole time. If whatever you set it to is too much, just turn the flashlight off halfway through or something like that. I mean, it'll work no matter how you want to do this. If you have any problems with that, let me know. But all your cameras I know probably have the bulb setting. They definitely have the manual setting, so you can do that either way. And then if you don't have some way to remote fire your camera, if you have a Canon or whatever, a Nikon, go on their website and look to see if they have, I know they do, Canon's got it. I know Nikon has it. The software that you can download to your phone that just lets you fire your camera. You can actually even change your settings most of the time. Like you can change the f-stop and the shutter speed and ISO and all of that right from your phone. That'll just keep you from having to touch the camera and bouncing it all over the place, that kind of thing. But I want to see, definitely come up with some subject matter here that is, that's obviously going to create some depth, some shadow, multiple shadows, multiple colors, whatever, you find interesting. But, obviously not some flat piece of something, but something that's got a little bit of shape to it so that you can play with. Make sure it's big enough that, it's not like really tiny that you're going to have trouble keeping something in focus or whatever. What else can I tell you? I think that probably just about covers it as far as what to do. You can make it on any scale you want. Some of the images that I showed you before, like guitars and so forth, those will work really well. Anything that'll cast a shadow will work really well. But again, this is a really tough technique. It's a really difficult thing to do remotely without being, hands-on on site. So I get that. I just want you to really play with the concept and try to understand what it is that we're doing here, because this is a huge problem solver, or can be down the road when you go to create images that, number one, you either want them to be interesting and eye-catching, or number two, you want to be able to create something that nobody else is going to be able to do or duplicate or even understand how you did it. That can go a long way towards making somebody happy with a job that you did for them or whatever. Anybody have any questions about the tools or techniques that we used today? They're, like I said, pretty much the same as last week, except for the light source. I think that probably tripped more of you up than anything, was your light source being a little broad and your images being a little bit overlit. So let's don't be afraid of shadows. Shadows can be your friend. You definitely need shadows for form and dimension. So even if you just see a little piece of this here and there, in fact, look at advertising, look at a lot of product advertising, and you're going to see that sometimes all you see is a little shape of something. It doesn't even show you the entire object for you to be able to know what it is. So it's kind of the same idea here. All right, so I know we're a little early again, but again, it's more about covering the subject matter than it is filling the time. And if everybody feels like they have a handle on it, we'll go ahead and let it go and see what you guys come up with for next week. Sound good? All right, guys. Have fun. We'll see you in a week.